Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. In this video, we will be talking about the role of security in product management. Uh, since you've been following, I hope you've been following the previous videos. Wherein we were just talking about the different aspects of product management, and today I thought of discussing security features, in the product management because security plays a very important key role when you develop any product for any industry, irrespective, because given the kind of everything being moving on to digital, the need for you to secure everything, all the digital assets that you have available both in your on-premises services servers or on cloud, or whether it's a private cloud or it's a hybrid sort of a model. So all these model includes this basics aspect where the security plays a key role, and in this video specifically we will be talking about this element when it comes to designing of the product, right? So let's talk about what product managers needs to know about the security, right? So let me give you just one quick example. Rather, I will just ask you one simple question, right? If given a chance, what do you prefer, right? Whether you want to add in new features or you want to go ahead with and adding more security layers into your product, right? The general answer and the majority of you would answer, uh, you know it would make much more sense if we make product much more attractive by adding a lot of other functionality, both from a look and display wise as well as from a back end functions perspective, and security generally takes a back seat when it comes to the comparing, or rather making a choice between these two elements, right? But security is very critical, right? And it may so happen that your product have hundreds of different functionalities, but if it is not secure, it's going to impact the entire organization, and the brand image of that particular organizations will fall apart. And that is how we would suggest to people to start focusing on the security aspect first, and then built on top by adding in different features and functionality so that your foundation would be strong. Now, what security and why security is important to product managers? Because there are whole lot of risks involved, right? Just now we've talked about the business risk, so it will impact the entire organizations, the brand image, the trust of customers in your product and services. That will impact very badly if something happens, right? We have seen a lot of use cases, lot of previous example where security has been breached for a particular organization, and how from the peaks of their success, the company torn down and came directly on the ground. So business risks are some of the very specific areas where this element come into play. Legal risk, right? Once you do not comply to all the legal and regulatory compliances, and it becomes very critical when you're dealing with the products who are directly involved in, let's say, government in services, government organizations, and also in the financial service, and also the financial sector, financial services, banking industry, that plays a very critical role because you've been completely being under the scrutiny of regulators. You've been constantly audited, and if you're not complying to all the security policies, right, be it all the checks and balances from the PII perspective, from the data security perspective. So all of these things play a very critical role when it comes to why security is very important for the product managers, right? Now, moving on, how to build security into a product. Now, this has been asked over and over again. How can we make the products more advanced in terms of security? How can we make our products more compliant to all the securities? So there are few suggestions being made, right? So do you back everything up regularly, right? So data security, keeping everything backed up is something that is very critical, be it your customer data, be it your organizational data, because all in case of security breach, right, do you have the required amount of backup to make sure that in case of events, in case of negative events like cyber hack or sort of any data breach, can you you retrieve back the data, right? Can you ensure the trust of the customers that they have put in you by providing you all the private data of theirs, right? Next one is, do you have the procedures to restore your systems from a backup when needed, right? Do you have the required amount of procedures, right, when the backup is needed? Do the third party platform services you use to meet or exceed your own security standards, right? This becomes very, very critical because if your products are not up to the mark, when it comes to dealing with other products and services, then definitely there are very high chances of imbalance, and that loopholes will create a gap where these attackers can come in between, right? So you have to constantly being able to match up the scale of what the industry is, and the partners that you are interacting with when developing all those products, and your security features are also up to the mark. Another important aspect is the encryption, right? So in case of any sensitive data, be it your PII data, be it your any very important personal records, or the data that is being very critical from a government perspective, from a political security perspective. So all these things have to be regularly encrypted by a defined encryption mechanism, so that in case of again, in case of breach, there are very less chances for the attackers or people who should not get their hand on this publicly available on this data source which they have hacked recently, right? So now, what are the regularly update your product? Do you regularly update your product? Do you have the kind of antivirus firewalls, which are fully compliant, which are fully functional, and constantly make checks and balances with your system? Do you keep up with all the application cable regulations and regulatory requirements we just talked about, right? So all these things coming together will create an environment where you as an organization will provide the maximum amount of trust within your customers in the industry, right, by following all the general best practices that the security features that require you to be, right, in terms of compliance, in terms of audit and all those things. Now, how the product plan prioritizes security? So, in product management, right? Very initial slide, we've just talked about how security take generally a backseat when it comes to the actual development, because management wants a lot of other new functions and features at the stake of the limited budget, and they don't want to spend it on security. But then it becomes critically important in case of breach, because it's sort of a mechanism that should not be reactive, but it should rather be done on a proactive basis, where you should enable things like single sign-on, enhanced password security, advanced admin management, and restriction on sharing the private data links, right? So single sign-on is one of the critical features, and we've seen organizations or the products like Microsoft Outlook, they are using it on a very frequent, very high advanced stage basis, and so which make sure that in case even if the password being hacked, right, you have multiple other level of authentication layers, which will ensure that the data, if in case at some level being captured or being tampered by the cyber attackers, how can you ensure that at a second layer you can stop them, right? Enhanced password security is another such area which is done on the similar lines, right? Admin management activity is something that needs to be done on a periodical basis. There are a lot of other softwares nowadays available which do the admin activities on an ongoing basis, right? That will ensure that the frequency and the periodicity with which you want these kind of admin activities or the management to happen, it can be done on a on a dashboard level, where you can configure all those elements into it. And of course, the restriction on sharing any sort of link that will put your organization into danger is something that needs to be avoided in the first place. So thank you all. Thank you. That is all from my side. I just wanted to make sure that we would cover the security elements in product management, because this is a topic which has generally been not addressed in a manner that it should be. And from my personal perspective, security plays a very critical role. It makes or breaks your case when it comes to actual launch of the product and people using it. If they don't feel that the product is not secure enough, they'll just simply drop the application, uninstall your application. They won't use it at all. So make sure all the general good practices when it comes to security is being constantly followed. And I hope this will definitely going to help product managers who are seeking into these roles and just wanted to understand more about it. Yeah.